So your mind is riddled with anxiety, depression knocking at your door, anger running rampant, and you feel dissatisfied with life. Well, commonly we find ourselves in a reactionary state of avoidance or resistance to what we're feeling and experiencing. And it makes sense why, because being with these sensations, these emotions can be quite uncomfortable a lot of the time. And the reason it is uncomfortable is actually as a result of our very resistance itself. It is an unwillingness to be with these sensations and emotions that causes the resistance to them, which brings about the suffering itself. And so we realize then later on, perhaps going down the spiritual path, that our resistance to what is doesn't absolve us of suffering. And then we question, well, perhaps we ought to question the resistance response. And we go on a new journey, which is to resist the resistance. And the common theme here is that you have an emotion or a sensation. You have a thought then arising on behalf of the emotional sensation. And this thought, this judgment, let's call it thought A. Thought A says, this emotion, this sensation is uncomfortable. I don't want this here. I want something else other than this emotion or sensation. That is thought A. Then our spiritual self comes on board and says, hey, I shouldn't judge the emotional sensation. The emotional sensation is fine, says thought B. I should question or judge thought A. Very noble thought, isn't it? Thought B. And it makes sense why. Because we've taught ourselves to not question our thoughts, our emotions and sensations, but instead to be with them. So thought B judges thought A. And that means we're in the clutches of thinking. Because then we find ourselves in this perpetual thinking loop of trying to correct thoughts with thoughts. And as I've stated multiple times, we don't solve an issue at the level at which the issue arose. So when we realize that neither thought A or thought B can ever absolve us of suffering, but that the very mechanism of thinking about an emotional sensation causes suffering itself, then we can set aside all thinking and perhaps just feel for once. Feel what is actually here. Feel what our body-mind is conveying. And allow that some space. And to realize that underneath the feeling, underneath the emotion, underneath the story attached to the feeling and emotion, there is raw sensation. And that the sensation, although it may seem uncomfortable at first, although it may seem dissatisfactory in one sense, we dig a layer deeper and see that sensation without thought attached to it really just carries an intensity of experience. That there is nothing wrong or right, there's nothing painful or pleasurable about it. It is just the ongoings of this moment. It is simply the activity of awareness in this moment. And in that realization, in that sea, there is a freedom, because we no longer find any resistance to what is. We no longer find any suffering or dissatisfaction. No. There is not even a sense of satisfaction per se, because there is no contrast to really emphasize. Rather, we simply find this unspeakable peace and contentment. It's just a little sharing from me to you. And so, if you trust me, if you think that you and I are a good match for one another, I would urge you to check out my spiritual life coaching program in the description below or above this video, depending on the platform, to check out what I have to offer and see if we can schedule a session together. It is my pleasure to be here with you. Take care.